This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, here we are, January the 25th, 2023. Are we getting out of the pandemic? Are we getting out of it? Things cleaning up a little bit. Hopefully, there'll be a silver lining. Hopefully. Folks, last year, speaking of which, the Silver Linings Playbook celebrated its 10th anniversary. And I don't know where the time goes, folks, because I saw that movie in the theater. And I've had Bree B on from the film, who played, of course, the cheating ex-wife of Bradley Cooper. But man, she's a sweetheart. Well, we have another guest on the show from the movie as well. Folks, we have Mr. Jeff Reim. How do you do, Jeff?
I'm great, Greg. And how are you today?
I'm doing great. Gee, my background thing all screwing up on me. Is it
I
showing up
see
at
it.
all?
Yeah,
There you go.
there it
I don't
is.
know. I had somebody tell me people say, your apartment's too messy. Change your background. I change my background anytime I hold something up.
It disappears.
Disappears. Yeah. But yeah, But before we get into Silver Linings Playbook, I would love to get into a little bit of your background and what led you get into performing arts.
Sure. Well, when I was in high school, I started to do all the musicals, the annual high school musicals and the bug bit. And I just couldn't get enough of it. And so I decided to try to make a living of it. And I went to college right here near my home here in New Jersey. It was called Glassboro State College back then, and it is now Rowan University. It's grown by leaps and bounds since I was there, and it's now a university that people come from all over the world to attend. But when I was there, it was just a little school called Glassboro State College, and I went there and got a Bachelor of Arts degree in theater and studied just about every aspect you can think of the professional theater world and tried to put that into practice and make it a career. And that's how I got started.
Well, I know you get a few credits on there, but the one, of course, that always seems to stand out is Silver Linings Playbook. Up for, of course, several Academy Awards. How does it feel being in a movie that is not only widely recognized, but has award recognition?
You know something? It's funny that you mentioned the Academy Award thing because I've been in two major motion pictures, lots of little things here and there, made for TV movies and dozens of commercials and things like that. But as far as big movies, I've been in two. The first one was 12 Monkeys, way back when in the mid 90s, was a Terry Gilliam film starring Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. I saw that in the theaters as well. That's not listed on your IMDb, is it?
Probably not because I was just background. You didn't even see my face in
Okay.
that one, sadly. But that was the other movie that I've done that was a big movie, and both of those movies were nominated for Academy Awards.
Yes.
Silver Linings got nominated for, I believe, 8 or something like that. It was at the time, I think it was a record for the number of Academy Awards uh, nominated, including all 4 of the actor categories. So that it had that distinction. I don't know whether that's still true after 10 years, but at the time, it I was told that it had garnered the most nominations that included the 4 actor nominations. But
Okay.
for 12 Monkeys, the nominations were for special effects and for costuming. And I can say that I wore a costume that was designed by a person who won an Academy Award or was nominated. I don't remember whether they won or not, to tell you the truth. But I always say, well, I'm a good luck charm. Hire me to be in your film, and you'll be nominated for Academy Awards.
before we talk about Silver Linings, you brought up 12 Monkeys. I did not know this. Let's take a little venture back because I love Terry Gilliam,
Oh,
of
me
course,
too.
Monty Python fame.
Oh, yeah.
He's done a lot of wonderful movies like, Brazil, and I even love the absolutely underrated Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where I had one of the stunt women on from the trapeze scene in it,
Oh,
Lisa
wow.
Hoyle. Yeah,
Time Bandits always comes to mind. That was
Time Bandits. Yep.
Terry Gilliam too.
Oh yeah. I mean, Terry Gilliam is something, and you could still see a lot of Monty Python-esque stuff in his non-Monty Python movies. You
Mhm.
can see it right in it.
Yeah, that
And of course,
offbeat sense
12
of
Monk.
humor.
Yeah, talk about your impressions of first meeting Terry Gilliam and being on set there with him.
Well, thankfully, I can say that I actually did get to meet Terry Gilliam. As I said, I was really just an extra at the time in that film, but I did get to meet him on the set. I was in a scene. If any of your listeners happen to watch that movie and they're watching a scene where we first discover the time machine that they send Bruce Willis back into the past in. It's like this capsule that he's lying in. There's all these people running around and pushing buttons and taking notes and all that sort of thing. And just as that scene begins, the camera sort of pans down from the ceiling of this very industrial looking place and it goes into this sciency, science fiction looking room, and it follows this little guy in a blue wool suit feverishly taking notes and looking around, and that's me. So I have the distinction of leading the viewers of that movie into the first scene where they get to see that crazy room. But anyway, since I was in sort of a special scene and there were only a handful of us there, not dozens, I was able to actually say hello to Mr. Gilliam. And the funny thing I can tell you, Greg, about him was I was expecting uh, a British sort of person, and I come around the corner and meet Terry Gilliam, and here's this guy. He looked like a cowboy. I mean, blue jeans and boots and a 10-gallon hat, and I'm thinking, this is Terry Gilliam. And I said hello, and he was, sure enough, that was him. But boy, that was the Americanized version of Terry Gilliam, I'll tell you. But a neat guy, a fun guy to listen to.
And the only non-British Monty Python.
Oh, right. Okay, there you
Yeah,
go. I
yeah,
I didn't even realize that that was true.
yeah. He, oh wow. He done a lot of stuff. Did he ever reminisce any about Monty Python?
No, as I said, I
No.
really only worked that one day and only saw him very briefly.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I also saw Bruce Willis, and I I like to share a little story when someone says, what was it like working with Bruce Willis?" I say, "Oh, well, I shared a cigar with Bruce Willis." The joke being that when I was getting ready to film that scene I was just talking about, Bruce Willis came to check out the set, and of course, he had his people around him, and he was smoking a big old stogie, and he was just in his bathrobe because he was quite nude in that scene, if you recall, in the little capsule they sent him back in time. And so he comes walking through in his bathrobe, and I said, "Good morning, Mr. Willis," as he passed by, and he stopped and looked at me just for a second, and I don't think he purposely blew cigar smoke at me, but but it came at me anyway, and he just kept moving. And so I said, "Well, hey, at least I got some of Bruce Willis's cigar smoke while I was there." But a neat guy, even though I didn't really get to speak with Bruce Willis, he was a neat guy on the set because, for one thing, I remember in the place we were filming that scene, it was very loud. There was all sorts of machinery going on, and it was just a loud environment. And the background people, myself included, were constantly being sort of yelled at by the. It wasn't Terry Gilliam; it was whoever was directing that little scene, the director of photography, I guess, at the time. And he would be yelling, "You're getting there late, or you're doing this, or you're doing that." And at one point, Bruce Willis actually finally spoke up loud and strong and said, and I forget the gentleman's name now who was directing that, but he said, so and so, it's really hard to hear over here. You got to give these people a break. And I thought that was kind of cool because, not every big star like that is as, kind to the little underlings around him. So that's a fond memory I have of that shoot.
There you go. No interactions though with Madeline Stowe or Brad Pitt, huh?
None at all. No, didn't get to see those two.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know you were part of this because I don't see it listed on your IMDb, but what an interesting I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, Terry Gilliam to me, he's a wonderful filmmaker and I love it even to like to this day, you'll still see little parts of Monty Python come into his filmmaking. You can see
Mhm.
that little bit, and like for example, in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, when you get the imagining of the lizards, in the lounge, that is total Monty Python.
Right, right.
Yeah.
The Monty Python cartoons that he always did.
Oh
Now that's
yeah. He.
interesting that you said he wasn't British. I honestly did not know that. Where was he from?
I don't know. I haven't done enough research on him, but I know he was. Um, from what I've read up, again, I'm not a scholar on Monty Python, but I believe he was roommates or something with, I believe it was John Cleese, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
Now, again, I could be wrong on this info, so anybody listening, don't jump on me. But I've heard the stories about John Cleese and Graham Chapman being connected early, and Terry Gilliam was in there somewhere, and then of course you got the other three, and sadly we've lost two of them, Graham Chapman, Terry Jones, both gone.
Yeah. Hmm.
I often said that in Life of Brian, why didn't Playboy go after Terry Jones and drag? I mean,
Yikes.
according to that movie, his character was told that she was raped, and she goes, "Well, it started out that way." You see, Terry Jones and drag was not about the Me Too movement. It was just about the Me Too move along with it.
Right.
But wow, 12 Monkeys, we had I went to university to take some film courses. I took film analysis and how to read film as a cinematic practice, and I took the history of film. And I went back the following semester to take science fiction course, and we watched
Mm.
science fiction movies, and one of them was 12 Monkeys.
How
So
about
yeah, but I saw it in the theater too when it came out. I think it was early '96, although it was released the States, I think limited in '95. So yeah, Terry Gilliam, wonderful director. I'm glad you get to meet him.
that? Hmm.
I probably would have a hard time. I probably would have annoyed him with the number of questions I would have had for him.
Yeah, I didn't have that luxury. I just had to move along and do my job.
There you go. But of course, Silver Linings Playbook, which looks from my end like I'm holding up nothing in my hand.
I trust you. I know
Oh,
it's there.
these
So, oh, there
bloody
you go.
old backgrounds. There you go. Well, I got the Blu-ray here, and you're my second interview from the film. I had Bree B on here, and I gotta say, interviewing her, you're supposed to hate her in the film because she's the
Right.
cheating wife. But
Right.
boy, oh boy, she has got such a young at heart personality.
Mm.
I enjoyed having her on the show, and remember whenever at the time I wasn't doing these on Zoom, I was doing these on the phone at the station, and when I tried to get a hold of her, it's like she had accidentally given me the wrong number to call, like the last digit was off.
Uh-oh.
But we managed to get things straightened out, and she was very apologetic, and she come on, and we just had a great time, and we're connected on Facebook, so I see what she's up to every now and again, and I love that red hair she has.
Oh yeah, Bria was the
Yeah.
first person that I met on the set of Silver Linings. She was already in a makeup chair when I got into hair and makeup that day that I worked, and there she was, and introduced herself. Just a sweet woman, and I didn't get to actually work directly with her, but in the scene that I was in, which was out at the parking lot of the Link
Yep.
in Philadelphia at an Eagles game, and she originally was there because she was supposed to be seen through the crowd by Pat, the character, the main character. Um, you know, uh, he's looking around and he keeps thinking he's seeing his ex-wife, Nikki, right?
Mhm.
And so they were going to use her to sort of, you know, catch a glimpse of a red-haired woman going by. But I don't think they. I don't. I know they didn't keep any of that. They cut a lot out of what we filmed that day. There must have been, probably 8 hours worth of footage, and it was cut down to maybe a minute and a half of the movie. It was a
Wow.
great scene, but so I can't say that I appeared on screen with her, but I did get to meet her, and she was very very nice to talk to.
I don't know why they would cut that. I actually think that might have been it would have really tied in with the movie well too, because it's not I would have kept that in.
Yeah, Gray, I totally agree with that. I think what David O. Russell ended up going for was a movie that was much more about the romance and the mental health angle of things. And so, even though if you read the book by Matthew Quick, which is a great read, um, it's much more to do with football and less to do with mental health. And then he sort of flipped that around and changed it, which I can understand. And I think because he did, it got a lot more notice than it would have if it was a movie more about football. But and it also you can't argue with it. The formula, it came out great. It's a
Mhm.
great movie, I think, and so well acted. And I'm so proud to have been a very 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 small part of it. But yeah, that scene in particular really captured the football side of the whole playbook thing. Silver Linings Playbook has a little double meaning. Playbook meaning his whole family is football fans, and
Mhm.
everything sort of is a you use football as an analogy for life. And it certainly does play a part throughout the movie, but not as much as it did in the book, and not as much as it would have if they'd let that scene run on as long as it could have. Oh goodness, there was so much going on in that scene, and I even had a few more lines. I only have a couple that made it into the final cut of the movie, but I had a couple of funny bits that I did that unfortunately went onto the cutting room floor, as they often do.
Well, you know what? At least you're still in there. It's nothing worse. Like I heard this when I had Dick Miller on here about 5 months before he passed away, and he was talking about we got talking about Pulp Fiction where he played Monster Joe, and the scene got cut. I mean, it's in the deleted scenes section, but
Hmm.
he had no idea, and he showed up to the premiere.
Oh no.
you know.
Yikes.
Um,
Oh well.
but nonetheless, at least you're still in there.
Yes, I was very glad that I was uh, still in it and featured for just a few seconds, but there I am. The most fun of that whole experience for me was hearing from people, on Facebook or whatever, calling me up that I hadn't heard from for years, just saying, "I was watching this movie, and all of a sudden," and more than one person told me they were in a movie theater and shouted out loud, "I know that guy!" and got shushed by the people around them. So I was happy to have done that for them.
It is nice to have that little bit of recognition in there, without it being too much over the top of not being able to walk down the street and
Oh yeah.
but you
I don't
know,
have that problem, that's for sure.
yeah.
But it is
Well,
fun.
it's nice to have somebody say, "You know what? I reached out to you, and,
That's right.
you're in a very different part of the movie than, say, Bree B, you know? So and, so it's kinda cool to get these other elements of the film, you know? Now, talk about being cast in this movie. What led up to that?
Well, I've been working with the same agent my whole career. Fresh out of college, I started working in theater and decided to, you know, put my hand into some auditions for film and commercial and things like that. And to do that, you really need to be, you know, connected to an agency of some kind. And so I started working with a woman here in Philadelphia called, I say here in Philadelphia because that's my home city. I'm in New Jersey, but it's just over the bridge, Philadelphia. So here in Philadelphia, a woman named Greer Lang, and she is still my agent after what 25. Oh gosh, going on 30 years, isn't it? Goodness gracious, it's crazy the way time flies. But it's interesting. That's a quick side note, and then I'll get back to how I started that audition process. Greer, who shout out to Greer if she hears this, wonderful lady who's been taking care of me as an agent for years, commercials and all sorts of things. Uh, there is an agency in Philadelphia called Greer Lang and Associates that Greer Lang no longer works for, because when I first started working with her, her agency was pretty small, Greer Lang and Associates, and I went to see her, and she had a couple of partners and a good number of clients, but not over the top. Well, it grew and grew to the point where she felt like she wasn't doing as much as she wanted to do for individuals anymore, and so she allowed them to keep her name, but she left the agency and went with just a partner of hers, Diana Giuliano, at Expressions. So I now work with Greer at a model and talent agency in Philadelphia called Expressions. And another shout out to Expressions. Great people there, and a nice small agency, not overwrought with hundreds of performers in their clientele. So anyway, um, that was my short side note about. I always think it's funny that Greer Lang doesn't work for Greer Lang anymore. She works for Expressions. So anyway, Greer got me an audition, as she often does, for this feature film, and I certainly wasn't expecting anything to come of it, because you go to 10 auditions and you're really lucky if you get the role from one of them. And I went to this audition, and it was for these guys who were at a football game, and they were football fans, and talking about football and tailgating and all this. And Greg, I have to admit, I've never been much of a football fan, at
Neither have
least
I.
at least up until that point. Right now, I'm watching my Eagles because they're like this close to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, I got to admit, I watch them. I'm a fair weather fan at best. I watch them when they're doing as well as they're doing right now. But at the time, I hadn't seen a football game in forever, and so I just kind of laughed and said, "Well, I'll do my best." So I went to this audition and read for the part, and it was just a comical part. The role was called Man Number One in the script. He didn't have a name, but I read for it, and I thought I did well. But I always think I did well, and didn't expect to hear anything else from it. But got a call from Greer that they asked me to come in for a callback and meet with the director. And I thought, oh my goodness, you're kidding! The football movie. So I went, and the callback was at a big um, office in somewhere in Center City. I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been the Comcast building. One of the big tall skyscraper buildings. We were no longer in the little casting director's office in Fishtown, I think it is. But we were, in the city and meeting with, high ups in the film, which that was really something to me. To tell you the truth, it was the first time I'd met with a major film director like David O. Russell. I usually end up seeing just the casting directors and things like that, but I come up to the callback, and there's a few other guys waiting, and I come in, and there's David O. Russell, who I had looked up a little bit, so I'd be able to talk to him some and not be completely uh, unable to say anything that would interest him. And he was very personable and very nice to audition for. Again, I can't stress enough how unusual it is for somebody big and important in the film industry to act kindly to other people who are nobody. That's me. I'm nobody. I'm only famous in my own family and and among my friends. So there I am. I'm nobody, and I walk in there and I'm reading this part, and the Diane Heary, who was the casting director, at the time from Heary Casting in Philadelphia, was reading the other parts, and I was just standing on camera, reading for guy number one. Or I think it was guy number one, not man number one. Now that I think of it, anyway. So I'm reading these lines and having a great time, and it went well. And then David asked me to read again and suggested something. And the main thing, if you remember, in the movie, I sort of uh, inadvertently insult the character of Pat, the Bradley Cooper character, because I say, "So I hear you just got out," when his brother had said, "Whatever you do, don't mention the mental hospital." So the first thing I say is, "Hey Pat, how you doing? I hear you just got out." Right? And I did all these other lines, and so there are all these lines where I say, sorry about that. I'm not used to talking. I had all these lines. I wish I had the script on me. I have it somewhere, but uh, uh, he had suggested, David did at the audition, that I try doing a little less of a reaction when I'm yelled at by Jake. That's the Shea Wiggum character, who's supposed to be like my buddy from work, right? He says, "What the f? I told you guys don't say anything," right? And I react. And so David suggested that I try a different reaction, or maybe no reaction at all. I said, "Sure, no problem." And so we read back over the scene, and I just absolutely deadpanned it and just stood there like, I said the awful thing, and then she said, "What the f?" And I just stood there, and apparently he just loved it. He thought and he looked over
Nice.
at Diane and he says, "I like this guy. I really like him." Um, and I didn't know whether that was going to amount to anything. Who else might be there looking for the role. But I got the call from Greer a day or two later, and she said, I wanted to call. I didn't want to email. I had to hear your voice. You got the part." And I said, "What part? What are you talking about?" She goes, the movie from Hearing Casting." I said, "You're kidding." And I was just absolutely on cloud nine. I mean, that was, for me, that was really big, because I knew this was a role with he didn't have an actual name. He was guy number one, but it had lines, and it was in the script, and I was going to be working with Bradley Cooper and David O. Russell. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I was just absolutely thrilled at the chance to do it. And it was every bit as fun as I expected it to be on set.
You funny, you mentioned, I'm gonna say I don't consider you a nobody, and I understand why you'd say that in conjunction with film, but I don't consider you a nobody. But
Oh, I
just gonna,
appreciate it.
well, it comes in right into play into something I want to bring up because I know you didn't work with Jennifer Lawrence on the film, but I do gotta bring her up here because I remember when she won the Academy Award for this. I was so delighted for her, and I was
Mm,
so happy and cheering on her to win this. I was a big Jennifer Lawrence fan at the time. At the time, my feelings towards her now have changed a lot due to stuff in the media with her,
mm,
and I'm not talking about stuff in a newspaper that could be not true, but when she says stuff like, and I understand when you're famous, don't approach people while they're eating in a restaurant or something
of
like that.
course.
I get it. I
Of
get it.
course.
I
Mhm.
understand that. But when there's comments like, "I won't take selfies with fans because I don't know them," but you'll take selfies with celebrities because they make you feel important nonetheless.
Right.
I have a problem with that, you know?
Yeah.
And she doesn't say in interviews her best friend, so and so, you know? It's always my best friend Amy Schumer. Like she's trying to tell people where she is.
As
And
if
I'm
she needs
like,
to at this point, you know?
you know, I often said I would always see pictures of her with Emma Stone. And as you can see, I'm wearing an Emma Stone t-shirt.
Oh,
I love
yes.
Emma. I'm a huge Emma Stone fan, and I often would say, well, I hope Lawrence does not influence Emma.
Hmm.
But I see a big, big difference between the two. When Jennifer Lawrence got married, it was all over everywhere.
Hmm.
When she has a child, it's all over everywhere. Emma Stone got married during the pandemic, and it wasn't over everywhere.
Hmm.
Emma Stone, the only reason we found out that she had a child is because some paparazzi just happened to catch her filling her gas tank up. And there she was with her COVID mask on and stuff, you know. And if with Emma Stone, I love the fact when she brings up her brother Spencer in interviews and stuff like that, you know, and because he's not famous.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I like that down to earth quality about Emma Stone. I like to champion people that have done these great things, but don't feel they have to butt ahead of me in a lineup, so to speak, you know?
Mhm. I understand, yeah.
Like Reese Witherspoon, another one, when that night there that she got her and her husband got pulled over and she says to the cops, you know, "Do you know who I am?"
Mhm.
I'm sorry, don't do that.
Yes, I know who you are. Here's your ticket.
Yeah. Don't do that, you know? And of
Mhm.
course, Reese wasn't the one at fault in that incident because she wasn't driving, but still,
Hmm.
still. So I haven't watched a Jennifer Lawrence movie in a while, you know? I have watched a few since Silver Linings, and then recently, you know, the whole thing of her saying thanks to her role in Hunger Games, she was the originator of women in action films, and I think there was a comment by Sigourney Weaver saying, "Boy, thank goodness for Jennifer Lawrence, or I would have never have gotten Alien." It's
That's funny.
like, you know, Jennifer, think before you speak. You know,
I
it's
hear
like
you.
you're falling on your face again at the Oscars. You know, on your dress.
Oh, right.
You know, it's been hard for me to take her seriously now after comments like that,
Mhm.
and it's funny because I've interviewed Bree B, who's supposed to be the woman you hate in this movie,
Right.
and Bree's the term young at heart is how I describe Bree. You know,
Mhm.
very young at heart disposition,
Right.
and I'm like, if she and Jennifer Lawrence were at a signing, I'd be more apt to go see Bree B than Jennifer.
That's funny.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to meet somebody whose attitude is, I'm above you because I'm famous,
Mhm.
you know? And that
Yep.
seems to be what I'm getting from her. And I don't want this to turn into a Jennifer Lawrence attack because she's worked with David O. Russell a lot and she's done great in every one of them.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not I'm not knocking her talent, but I am gonna knock her attitude, you know.
Mhm.
So
Well,
I don't.
speaking of Bria B, just while you're mentioning that, I again, she was such a pleasure to talk to. First person that I met on the set, and she was it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. Film schedules are are awful. But so oh yeah, I'm really good at side notes. So I always bring me back if I go too far. But quick
Mhm.
side note, I get to the set at 4 o'clock in the morning and I have my own trailer. I was so excited. Guy number one, it says on the door, guy number one. And I had my own little trailer, and I was just like, oh, now I've arrived. But anyway, at the in the makeup trailer, met Bria B. And again, just such a personal lady. And years later, it's going to be, I guess, what, maybe 7 years later or so. So 3 years ago, I'm watching the Goldbergs, which I'm sure you talked about that when you talked with Bria, and they bring in this character of Bria B, and of course it takes place in Philadelphia, and so I hear references to all sorts of Philadelphia things that I know, and that they do things at Wawa, and Wawa is a big thing, in the area where I live in Philadelphia, and so he's always mentioning these things from his childhood. Adam F. Goldberg, who created the show, it's all kind of about his life growing up, and he meets this girl at school called Bria P, and I'm thinking, all right, wait a second, Philadelphia. A girl, a redheaded girl that is about Adam F. Goldberg's age. This has to be the Bria B who I met on Silver Linings, and sure enough, the character, the young girl's character, her mother was in an episode, and Bria plays her own mother, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've worked with her, I know her, that's Bria P, and she was great in that too, and it was fun to see her in that recurring role. But the fact that a character was named for her and became, she's probably as famous for the character based on her as she is for the work that she's done. But again, yes, seems at least when I met her those years ago, so personable and down to earth, and not at all, stuck on herself because of her accomplishments.
It's funny you mentioned the trailer thing. Here's a down to earth thing. I've interviewed a few people, whether it be the Blues Brothers or uh, name film that John Candy's been in,
Oh,
I've heard more than once John Candy was one of these people, when you meet him, one of the first questions he'd ask you on a film set was, "What's your trailer like?" And he would make sure you had the best trailer.
huh.
Yeah, I've heard that more than once. He'd make sure that you were taken care of,
I
you
loved
know?
John Candy. I was always such a huge fan, and he left us so soon.
He
Man,
did.
that was tragic when I heard about that.
Yeah.
Because he could have offered us so much more. He'd still be working today, like
Yeah.
Steve Martin. And I always think of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is one of my very favorite movies that
Yep.
he and Steve Martin did together. And Steve's still doing a lot of work, and I know that John Candy could have been too had he not gone so soon. But it's always so wonderful to hear about people like that who no one would expect to treat others kindly, because you just kind of get this reputation, in the business as, oh, you don't talk to that person, don't go up to that person, they won't talk to you back. Um, but I've heard similar stories about other people, old timers like Walter Matthau. I heard
Oh,
was
yes, I have
a
too.
huge
I've
teddy
interviewed a
bear.
couple of the Bad News Bears kids.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard wonderful things about Walter, and
Yeah.
Robin Williams is another one I hear.
Yes, yes. I've worked with people. Actually, I worked with a woman who was a stunt woman in Hollywood for some time, and she worked on a set with Robin Williams, and had some funny stories to tell about him, and how he was just always so much fun on a movie set. So it's always great to know that there are some. And I don't know what you've heard about Bradley Cooper, but I'll tell you that he was an absolute dear to work with.
I've
on
heard
set.
good things about Bradley.
I'm glad to hear that because I think it's a well-deserved reputation. Um, People, of course, the first thing my wife asked when I'm texting her, I'm done on set. What was Bradley like to work with? All my people at work are asking me. Okay, well, not that I want to give everybody another reason to love Bradley Cooper, but turns out he's a real sweetheart. Was so generous to me on the set. I kept missing a cue at one point because David would shout out these new ideas right off screen, and we'd have to kind of roll with them. And two or three times it caught me off guard, and Bradley was very patient about it and just says like, just listen to this line and then come right in with it. He's kind of coaching me along, and and just afterwards came up and shook my hand and said what a pleasure it was, and I was, wow, really? Well, thank you. So what a really nice guy to work with. All those guys that I work with, Shea Wiggum was played Jake,
Yeah.
and he was really fun to work with, and I was supposed to be one of his buddies from work. There was like four of us there, a couple named characters, with in the script, and then some other kind of background guys who were filled in from the production company or something, and all really nice to work with. But Shay is responsible for having named my character. In a burst of creativity, he named my character Jeffrey because that's my actual name. But it was because David O. Russell likes to work in a sort of improvisational manner. He'll just sort of
Nice.
shout some ideas, and then the characters just start bouncing things off of each other. And Shea Wiggum was nuts. Oh, he just kept going on and on with all these really funny bits. And again, there's another reason why it's such a shame that that scene got cut down to nearly nothing.
You
Just
never
some
know. We
brilliant.
might get an uncut version at some point. You
Wouldn't
never
that be
know.
fun? Yeah, it would be probably 4 days long, but
Look, if people could sit through Titanic, they could sit through Silver Linings Playbook.
that's right.
I really like this movie because I can relate to a lot of it. I know what it's like to have my heart crushed by a female and trying everything in your power to try to move on from it.
Hmm,
And I mean, I wasn't in a mental hospital, mind you, but I know what it's like. You're trying to survive. Your parents have to and your family have to kind of cope with your dealing with it,
right.
and so what Bradley Cooper is dealing with here emotionally and trying to move on, and even when the song comes up that makes him just, yeah,
Right.
I get that. There
Mhm.
was something that really triggered me with this movie on a personal level, and I'm glad you had a great experience with Bradley Cooper. I have heard good things about him,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, lots of fun to work with. Real nice
Yeah.
guy.
And Jennifer Lawrence, I don't want to sit here and attack her. She's very talented.
Of course.
I haven't gotten rid of my movies I have with her in it or anything like
Right.
that. But
Well, maybe
it's
if she hears enough people say things like what you're saying, she'll start to think twice. Because I think really deep down at heart, everybody can remember back to a time when they were just starting out, and how were they treated when they were an extra, or
yeah.
one of a cattle call of auditioners that didn't get the role. And I think it's probably really easy for a celebrity to go to someone's head and for them to start thinking that they uh, I don't know, that there's different rules that apply to them somehow. But I think you know people like Bradley and these others that we've just been talking about, they had that same fame, and they just went a different way with it. They
Yeah.
didn't they didn't go down that road, and there's something to be said for that for sure.
Well, Jennifer had a lot of great scenes. Did you meet her in this at
I did
all?
not.
No.
No. No.
I love the scenes where he's, like, jogging and she goes like, "Hey," and she just kinda almost cuts him off and stuff
Right,
like that.
right.
I mean, I love her in this movie, it's just, and I get it. I wouldn't approach her at a restaurant either, and let her be,
Right. Sure.
but I would like to think that I wouldn't be looked at as if I was dirt under her feet, you know?
Sure. Right.
Yeah. But nonetheless, maybe she'll change her attitude, but she's wonderful in this movie, and the dynamic between her and Bradley Cooper was great. One person I gotta bring up in this movie, that was a standout, a smaller role, but a standout, Chris Tucker,
Mm,
quite a
mhm.
different role for him.
Yeah, and it's, his role really ended up, I don't really know how much more we would have seen of that character, but it probably was cut like so much was to try to focus in on the romance between the two main characters, of course. But yeah, I agree that he played it really, really well. Lots of fun, you know what I mean? Everything he said was funny, and yet it seemed to come from a real place. You believed that he was who he said he was.
And
Yeah, I
another
agree.
one, yeah, another one too. I remember seeing Julia Stiles in this, and it's like I hadn't seen her in a while, and it's like it was so nice to see her in this too. And I've actually heard good things about Julia Stiles,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it was just really cool seeing her, of course, as um, the wife of Cooper's friend there, and
Right.
of course they're trying to keep things tight knit, and
Right.
because they're friends with the wife or ex-wife, and
Yeah.
but it was like, and then of course, you had of course Jennifer Lawrence mixed into this as well, and
Right.
some nice dynamic there. But it was just nice seeing Julia Stiles in this, because
Right.
she was in a lot of, like, after 10 Things I Hate About You, she was in a lot of the teen comedies.
Mm.
But it was nice to see her play an adult
Something
character like
different.
this,
Sure.
and she
Yeah.
was really good.
Yeah, and John Ortiz, of course, is the friend you're talking about. She's his wife, John Ortiz,
John
and
Ortiz.
that was the other big star in the film that I spent a lot of time with on set that day at the in the tailgating scene, and he was a lot of fun to talk to. We got chatting about Ocean City, New Jersey, which is a little family resort town. We call it down the shore around here, going out to the Ocean City, New Jersey. He was talking about his family had a house there at some point, or his sister or something like that. And so we had something in common. And again, just real personal guys personable, I should say, guys. Shea Wiggum and Bradley and John, they were all really, really great to work with. Everybody always asks, did you get to meet, Jennifer Lawrence, or did you get to meet De Niro? And I have to say, no, unfortunately, I didn't. But I still have, I don't know if this is even legal, but I still have my call sheet that has my name and the time I had to get there, and all of that on there. And of course, it has everybody, in my scene there, Bradley Cooper and Shea Wiggum and all these. And on the call sheet is Robert De Niro, but it says held up in New York or something like that. So he was in New York for the day, on call if they needed him, but he wasn't going to be in town. He wasn't going to be in Philadelphia. But so I didn't get to meet Robert De Niro, but my name is on a call list with his. So I'm like,
Well, of
that's
course you didn't get to meet Robert De Niro. His character got in trouble and wasn't allowed to go.
that's it. He was banned from the stadium. Yeah,
His character had a few more problems than Bradley Cooper when it comes right down to it.
that's right.
Li- Like
Right.
father, like son. Robert De Niro, Jackie Weaver, both wonderful in the
Oh,
movie too.
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the dynamic of the characters. This was written very, very well,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
had a
David
lot
O.
of
Russell wrote the screenplay as well, and it's funny that he kind of wrote it as we went. I mean, there was a script, and I got my pages of the script before, to study. Um, and what I read was great, but what I read was nothing like what we ended up doing because I don't know how this works. Someone will have to explain it to me sometime about sound in film. My son is in film school. He's a freshman in college, and he's going to have to explain this to me sometime. But somehow or other, we all have mics on, right, for these
Yep.
scenes, like in the outdoors, and they're hidden. It's amazing how they hide these teeny tiny little mics. You'll never see them. But
This is my silver lining.
oh, hello there.
This is Skittles.
Skittles is adorable. My
Adorable,
kitty
like Bree
cat's
B.
here, yes, but not red haired.
Not red hair, no, he black and white haired. Yeah, this is my buddy.
Right.
Yeah, he says, "You're embarrassing me. You're
Oh,
using me for hits, likes, and views."
uh, that's
I'm like,
okay.
yes.
Whatever works. Whatever works.
He
Uh,
says, "There's no silver lining there." Of course there is.
I have a cat around here somewhere, but I guess she can't get in because I have the door shut in this room that I'm in right now. But and we have a
I was
brand new
interview
puppy. That's
I was interviewing Little Nell from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and her cat would wander right in front of her. You can see its tail up.
oh, that's funny.
Yep. Yeah, cats like to photobomb, except mine. I just happen to have to grab them and put them up here.
Right.
But
Uh, I forget what I was
yeah, the
talking about
script.
just then. Oh well,
The,
that couldn't have been too important.
yeah, Skittles, you interrupted the.
Oh, I know. I was talking about how David. You mentioned how the script was so well written, and
Yeah,
it's funny. It really is. At least the scenes that I was part of and was there to listen to and experience. He would literally shout lines from off camera. He'd be somewhere, looking at his view, his monitor, whatever. And it's not unusual for a director to shout out directions to the actors as they're working, and to the cameras and whatever. But he would literally do it as we were talking. Our characters would be having conversations, and 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 he would shout out a new line to try, and we'd go with it, and some of them only got one take or whatever. So somehow or other they managed to just zone in, on the mics that are being, the characters that are speaking right at that second, and somehow you don't hear this off-screen shouting from David O. Russell constantly rewriting his scripts as we go. But that's exactly how he did it. He pretty much, he took his outline, the bare bones of the script, and just thought of stuff on the fly and just shouted out lines and ideas for lines constantly throughout the whole scene.
did you go to the premiere for it?
I did not. No, no one invited me to the premiere. So I was invited to the rap party, which would have been really nice, but I had another thing to do. And everybody says, "What? You went did something else?" "Oh, I have work, and I had, committed to that job, and I have to go to that job. What can I do? I can't just stop everything because Hollywood says there's a party."
Yeah.
So, but no, I didn't go to the premiere, and unfortunately didn't get to the rap party, which I really would have liked to do because I might have been able to meet De Niro or Jennifer Lawrence if I had.
What was your reaction when it was up for all the Academy Awards?
Oh gosh, just I was thrilled. I I felt like it was going to be something special when I went to see it. Of course, as soon as it came out, my older son and I went to the theater to watch and see how much of what I did made it to the final cut. Thrilled to see that, like you said before, that some of it made it. I wasn't cut altogether. Um, but I knew that it was something special as the credits roll at the end, and I'm thinking, this is a really good movie. This isn't just oh, that's, hey, that was a pretty good movie that you were in. I knew it was going to be something special. I wasn't surprised to hear that it was nominated for a couple of awards, but that it was nominated for so many, including all of the actors. And I think they all deserved it. I think all of those nominations were appropriate, and I think I actually think it was kind of strange that it only won one of the awards that it was up for, because it seemed like so many of them, it was such a great contender.
I was happy Jennifer won, you
Hmm.
know? She certainly between her and Bradley Cooper, they're both very relatable characters in the movie,
Hmm. Yeah.
and so you really get it, and I loved watching their dance scene, or the various types of dance they were involved with too, which was really cool. So,
Right.
yeah. You got not a big IMDb here, but I do want to talk about a couple of these other credits here because, well, I want to get to know a little more about you here. So,
Yeah, my I have to thank my sister-in-law, Carol Ford. She is an author, and I understand you sometimes interview authors. I might
I
want to
do.
give you her contact information because she's written some neat books. Um, she gave me this IMDb page as a gift right after Silver Linings, because she said you've got to have a page on IMDb. You've got to be able to promote yourself. Well, Greg, I am a terrible self promoter. I'm absolutely awful at it. I never update my website. I never check Facebook, LinkedIn, all these things. But God bless her, she keeps up. She must pay an annual fee or whatever. But there's my IMDb page, complete with the 4 or 5 credits that are on there. Um,
Well, you got one here. It's just you and one other person, the Young Patriots multimedia educational series on the American flag with you and Cara Delizia.
Yeah, I honestly don't know who she is,
Okay.
but it was a series of videos. It just was straight to video, not a film, about the American flag and honoring the flag and patriotism, that sort of thing. And I think it was a 4 video series. And I auditioned for that also in Philadelphia. They were going to film this one little scene in Old City, where there's still some buildings that look like they're right out of the mid 18th century. And So I auditioned and got the role of Francis Bellamy, who was the writer of the Pledge of Allegiance, of all things. So here I'm going to play a character who lived long ago in a city similar to Philadelphia and wrote the words to the original Pledge of Allegiance. Turns out that he was actually from Boston. So I don't know why they filmed in Philadelphia, but they did, and lucky me, because I got to do that. You will actually, if you happen upon that somehow, which would be very impressive, you will see me on the cover of again, I think it's a 4 video series, and on one of them I'm on the cover because it's all about the Pledge of Allegiance specifically, and it centers on me, on my character. And what a fun shoot that was! Oh my goodness! If you get a hold of that to look at, it's quite silly and fun.
And of course, on here it says you play a drug dealer in My Father's Gun.
Yeah, I ended up actually, that was the first of a couple of shows, like made for TV movies, that I did with a production company called NFL Films, which actually produces things for the NFL as well. But they, at the time at least, they were doing a lot of producing films for the History Channel, among other
Hmm.
things. And I got to know a guy there on this film shoot for that you're mentioning there. My Father's Gun. It was either a single, short movie, or a very short series, miniseries, um, about Irish immigrants becoming police officers, and generations and things like that. A neat little series, and I got a little extra role on it. And originally I was just going to be a person at a party, and I did that role, but they were looking for someone who could look like a drug dealer from the 1970s. So the party scene I was in was from the 1940s, and I was all in a get up that looked like I was from the 40s. And then I finished that, and they're looking around for somebody who can play this drug dealer to be basically manhandled in a disgusting men's room somewhere, being arrested by one of the main characters in the film. And I don't know what it meant at the time, but the director's looking around and he goes, "You," he points to me. I'm like, "Sure, okay. I've never I've never touched a drug in my life, but sure, if I look like a drug dealer, great." I guess it was because I was really skinny at the time and gaunt and looked like I could play somebody who was kind of strung out or whatever. But anyway, that's funny that you mentioned that one because yeah, that was an interesting shoot, and I kind of got I didn't have any lines or anything. I was just sort of arrested, and then the main character sort of throws me up against a mirror and in this disgusting men's room and cuffs me and drags me off, hollering all sorts of things, and I'm just grunting and groaning. But the director of that film, I got talking to him a little bit and he remembered me. And so you might also see, I think it's on my IMDb, another thing there called First Incursion, which is uh, a History Channel film about the Spanish American War.
Yep, I see that on here.
And so when I auditioned for that, Phil Tuckett was his name, the guy who directed that.
Directed it. Yep.
And he remembered me and he said, that he was glad to see me again. I couldn't believe it because, again, it's very common for a director or a producer or other actors to overlook people in little roles like background players and day players and things like that. And here, this guy remembered me, and I was just so thrilled. And he hired me, and I ended up having a line, a pretty decent little cameo, one of those interview type shows where there's experts and historical professors and things talking about the Spanish American War, and they mention a journalist during that time called George Graham, and so they mention him, and then you see him, and he talks, and it's as if he's giving an interview about what it was like to be a journalist, on a boat during the Spanish American War, and that was me. And so I got to do that. That was a really fun shoot, again, right here in Philadelphia, and you know what? The director said, "Next time we're going to get you something bigger. I can't wait to work with you again." If you're out there, Phil, or someone from NFL Films, I've yet to get that wonderful role that we've talked about, but always hoped it might happen.
There you go. There you go. Do you have any charities or web page or anything like that that you want to plug and promote on here?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned charities because it would have been hard to think of one, except that I just mentioned about my sister-in-law, Carol Ford. Carol M. Ford is her name. She is the author of a great book. Another quick side note: a great book about Bob Crane, the American radio star and actor who was murdered. She did a biography of Bob Crane that tells his whole story of his career without delving much into the sensationalism of how he died. And it has been lauded as a really, really great work. And it's I did the audiobook for it as the reason I
Hmm.
mention it. So it's Bob Crane, the biography by Carol M. Ford. Anyway, Carol has a charity that she started. She has written a series of other books called Golden Linings, and it's about pets and about how they enrich our lives. And what she does is she interviews people and has them submit stories about their pets and pictures and things. And she does these little books, and I believe she's done three of them so far. And some of my pets have been featured in there and whatnot. And all of the proceeds from those books go to this charity, Golden Linings, for pets. and she would be able to tell you much better
Oh, please
where
put
all
me
the
in
money goes
touch.
to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to do that because she actually does a lot of interviews because of her Bob Crane connection, and you might like to talk to her about that, but also about the other books she's written. So
Oh, I
I'll
bet
definitely give
Skittles would
you.
like that.
Yeah, I will. So I'll turn people on to Carol M. Ford. You can find her on Facebook, and she's, if you look her up as the author of the Bob Crane biography, I'm sure you'll find her right away. And she's got that charity, which I think is a really nice cause. As far as websites for me, I do have a website. It's Jeff Ream dot blogspot blogspot, it's a hard word to
Mhm.
say, .com, jeffream dot blogspot dot com. I had jeffream.com at one point, but somebody snatched it up from me when I wasn't looking. I let it go by. I let it lapse, and someone from Germany, I think, or something like that, ended up taking it. But anyway, so I need to update that website because I looked at it earlier today because I thought you might ask for a website where someone could look me up, and there it is. But it is so out of date; it's pitiful. So I'm going to update that thing, and the first thing I'm going to put on there is this interview because it's been great talking to you today, Greg.
Well, it'll be unlisted on YouTube for a while, but because I don't put them up right away, I
Right.
always send the link to people even when it's unlisted, and
Okay.
you're still permitted to put it up.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I was told early on when I was at the station by my station manager, she said, "Don't put interviews up right away. Save some for a rainy day." And COVID became the rainy day
Mm.
because when station went into lockdown, I
Oof.
had no way of doing this. And it was actually one of my guests that turned me on to Zoom, and it's so nice if I just do this from my apartment, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I could do schedule. I don't have to call the station to see if Studio B is available because
If
obviously there's
anything
other.
good came from the pandemic, it is our ability to use technology like this on like a daily basis.
Yeah,
This sort of thing was very strange before 2020, and now
yeah,
it's absolutely commonplace. Like everybody has done a Zoom at some point or another, and it's very, very useful technology. So I'm happy to have found that myself.
yeah. I know when I interviewed Bree, that was when I was at the station. I'm still at the station, but I do the interviews from here, and gotta get her on again because I gotta see her face to face with that red hair, you know? But, nonetheless, it was wonderful having you come on here today. I thank you. I know you said to me, "I don't know how much I could share. I was only in less than a day of shoot," you know? And I'm like,
Right.
"Yeah, but I mean, look, we've gotten good time in here."
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure talking about it.
Well, I'm glad, and, from never consider yourself a nobody. You're not a nobody, man.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Greg.
You're just as much as somebody as anybody else, yeah, put me in touch with your sister-in-law there, and I'll have her on, and we'll talk about that'd be a perfect one for Skittles to come on over here.
Yeah, there you go.
I would
Absolutely.
talk to her about that,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. Yeah, you
For
know?
sure.
Oh, yeah. My cat probably wouldn't wanna be interviewed, though.
Um,
Yeah.
you know
I'm
something,
like,
Greg? Before we hang up, I just had one little story that I had in the back of my head, and I'm like, I gotta tell this story
"Oh,
because
yeah, please."
I think, I think fans of the movie will just find it, get a little bit of a kick out of it. And that is during that whole scene, or at least the latter half of the scene in the parking lot at the link, that scene that we've been talking about that we were in with Bradley Cooper and the football game. Um, we had reached lunchtime, halfway through the day, and the the extras, of which there were probably 100, all, of course, had to be, brought over to a little table, craft services table, to pick up snacks and things for lunch. But they ordered cheesesteaks for all of us, quote unquote, principals. I was my little role was considered a principal, and so they ordered cheesesteaks for us, and of course most of us got a chance to go and sit down and eat, and get back on set when it was time. But Bradley had a cheesesteak, and it's just a little something funny to keep in your mind as you're watching that scene. In most of that scene, he is carrying a half-eaten cheesesteak around in his pocket. He's walking around doing these scenes and going through these monologues and all of this stuff. And it would be funny to watch because they'd call cut, and he'd reach into his pocket and take a quick bite of the cheesesteak, and somehow roll it back up in the paper and throw it back in. So I just thought it was such a funny little story to tell people, because it's something you would never know. You'd never hear about that. And of course, you can't see it on screen, but I just always found that something kind of funny to mention when talking about having filmed that scene with Bradley.
Well, at least he enjoyed the, craft service, so there you go.
Right.
Compliment to them.
Right.
There you go. Well, Jeff Ream, before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Oh, not wouldn't mind that at all.
Just, state your name and that you are in, Silver Linings Playbook, and say that, you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Okay. This is Jeff Ream, Jeffrey from Silver Linings Playbook, and I have had the pleasure of sitting here talking with Greg Gilbert from Python's Paradise. Thank you, Greg.
No problem. You get that in one take. Wow. I've had a few people stick with 5 or 6.
Oh,
And I always keep the mistakes in, because it makes the interview look more natural, and
true.
yeah, I like to get the real thing of the people, and
Well, I can do it again with a mistake if you like.
nope, nope, no, you're good. You're
Good.
great.
All right.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for the honor. I really appreciate it. And yeah, put me in touch with your sister-in-law, and we'll
Will do.
we'll put that together.
Thank you, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. God bless, and you have yourself a wonderful day.
All righty. You take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.